4 anti-ultra-low emission zone campaigners. Now, ultra-low emission zone is a tax, basically, on old cars. They pleaded not guilty to harassing the mayor, Sadiq Khan, at his family home. The activists were charged with harassment of a person in his home following an anti-ULEZ protest in Tooting on April the 6th. A fifth man, who's, I think, 64 years old, was charged with obstructing or resisting a police officer in the execution of their duty in relation to that same incident. Well, the group have dubbed themselves the Tooting Five. They're set to face a trial, I think, at Westminster Magistrates Court in November. Joining me now is Conservative Councillor for Bromley, Simon Fawthrop. Simon, thanks for joining us. What are the Tooting Five being charged with?
Well, Lembit, it's very interesting. First of all, it's actually I'll just go down. We're down to 4 now because the person who was charged with resisting arrest has had all charges dropped against him. So we're down to 4. So because he didn't resist arrest, basically, and and actually, if you knew the gentleman, he has Parkinson's and is very unfirm on his feet. And if you'd have seen the video of it, it actually it's one of those things that makes you be framed almost seem quite bizarre, So anyhow, that's a separate thing. So we're down to 4, which is the good news after the court hearing on Friday, and they're charged under the police. And it's the Criminal Justice and Police Act 2001, Section 42A. You've highlighted a part of it there. And basically, this is one of those I think it was intended to harass people who are stalking type of thing, really. That's what it was probably intended for. But in this particular instance, in the middle of an election campaign, with people having placards saying, get Khan out and things like that, it almost looked political in the way that it was done. People arrived at the scene, as they do, to do these protests all around London. I think they've done 40 or 50 of them. Someone said that as many as 70 have taken place. And never been any trouble. Usually the local police turn up and say, hello, what's going on here? They explain what's going on, have a nice conversation, and carry on with their protest. In this particular instance, all of a sudden, 200 police officers turned up in riot gear and all the rest of it to arrest some old folk, basically. And you've hinted at what it's about. And it's very strange because effectively they were just protesting politically. So they're being accused of being, as you say, in the vicinity rather than outside his house, in the vicinity of his dwelling. And then they're saying, well, they tried to prevent him from doing something that he's entitled to do. Well, I'm not sure what it is. And it's also, they've got to have reasonable grounds in all of this. So as you can imagine, it's particularly peculiar. But if you go back to, I think it's October last year, same at Westminster Magistrates Court, a young lady by the name of Greta Thunberg was charged on very similar charges and was let off. Because apparently, and this could be some sort of double standards, DJ Law said that the conditions were unclear about what they had to do and unreasonable. They hadn't been properly communicated, and it was disproportionate interference in the right to free speech. So I think that's one of the defences that the people put forward in court on Friday. So that's a brief rundown of where we are, and they've all pleaded not guilty. So we'll see what happens when we get to the trial. Does that help you with a synopsis?
Yeah, it tells you a synopsis, but it doesn't make me any happier, Simon. It sounds as bad as I feared. And I think Nige in the chat at TNT.news sums it up. It's the "we will arrest you on whatever reason we choose" act. It's basically what it seems like. I'm just stunned by the level of interference we now have. By the way, Neil, yeah, I understand the point you're making about the multi-trillion-dollar accounts. Is interesting. I'll leave that for now. I don't want you to think I was making light of what you said. But returning to this, Simon, here's the issue. You've now got what looks like a politicized two-tier policing system where little Greta Thunberg, because she's saving us from the non-existent climate emergency, gets off, but OAPs with Parkinson's get arrested because it's not allowed to demonstrate against the great savior of London, not Sadiq Khan.
There is an element to that. If the CPS are worth their salt, they'll look at the evidence and they'll review it and they'll drop these cases as well. So it's early days. In fairness, Greta Thunberg was arrested and then they dropped the cases later. So I'm trying to be fair here. Okay. So hopefully this will get to the same position and the CPS will realise that it's a load of rubbish. For example, in their opening statements in court, the CPS said, oh yes, all of these people were interviewed under caution and they gave a no comment interview. Well, that was hotly contested in the court, and it was stated that not a single one of the people arrested had been interviewed, and nor had they been given a caution. So it was very, very interesting that already it's unravelling. So we'll see what happens. And it's effectively due process hasn't taken place to start with, and then there's lots of issues. One of the interesting things is, these are elderly people. They have difficulty hearing, as sometimes happens as you get a bit older. And of course, in the courtroom, the judge himself said, I can see that this could be an issue, because clearly they've got to communicate clearly. And in communication, usually, if you and I have a conversation, you want to confirm something, particularly if it's legal, you say, did you hear that? Did you understand that? Are you aware of what I've said? And it's quite interesting. Ultimately, the evidence will out, and all the video footage that there is, hopefully, on the other side of the case, which is the defendant's side, will come out if it does go to trial. But really, it should be dropped. It's a complete waste of public money and public time and effort. But we'll see what happens.